The cameras flashed, applause filled the golden hall, and I stood there, frozen, watching my husband kiss his pregnant mistress under the spotlight meant for me. The crowd gasped, the cameras clicked, and yet I smiled. Because what he didn't know was that the same stage he stood on, basking in glory, would soon become the place where his empire began to crumble. The night was supposed to be perfect. Months of planning, rehearsals, designs, and meetings, all leading to this one moment, the annual Business Excellence Gala, a celebration of success, innovation, and power. The name Ethan Callaway echoed across the hall as the announcer introduced the winner of Man of the Year. The applause was deafening. He looked flawless in his black tuxedo, his smile so polished it could convince the world he was everything good. And maybe once, he had been. Once, he was the man who held my trembling hand through college exams, the man who promised that we'd build something lasting, together. I had believed in him, in us. I was proud to be Mrs. Lila Callaway, wife of a man the world admired. But admiration fades when it's built on lies. As he walked to the stage, the lights glinting off the trophy that bore his name, my eyes caught sight of her, sitting in the front row, wearing a black satin gown that clung to her like a secret she wasn't afraid to show anymore. Her name was Tessa. Once, she was my husband's assistant. Soft-spoken, kind, eager to learn. Until that eagerness turned into something else entirely. I saw it before anyone else did. The way her eyes followed him, the late nights at the office that stretched longer than reason allowed, the new perfume that lingered on his shirts. I knew. I always knew. But I stayed silent, waiting for him to come clean. He never did. So I built my silence into a weapon. When the host handed him the microphone, I straightened my posture and prepared for the speech I thought I'd hear. I owe this to my incredible wife, Lila, I imagined he'd say. Maybe he'd even glance at me, give me that proud smile he once reserved only for me. But instead, I watched as he took a breath and said, "There's someone I need to thank tonight. The woman who stood by me when I almost lost myself. Who believed in me when I didn't deserve it." My heart paused mid-beat. He turned, not toward me, but toward her. And then, before anyone could process what was happening, he reached out his hand and called her to the stage. Tessa hesitated for a heartbeat before rising, her hand resting gently over her barely rounded belly. The hall went quiet. Every flash, every camera, every whisper became a blur. My world tilted, but I didn't fall. He wrapped his arm around her and whispered something that made her blush. And then he said it, those words that shattered every illusion I had left. "This woman has changed my life. She's my future." The applause that followed sounded like thunder in my ears. I stood motionless, my lips curved into the faintest of smiles. The kind of smile that hides storms behind serenity. I could feel eyes on me, sympathetic glances from people who loved gossip more than truth. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. He had chosen his moment perfectly, public, dazzling, humiliating. But what he didn't know was that I had already chosen mine. When the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed into laughter and wine, I stood near the bar, untouched drink in hand, watching him play the part of a charming hero. He looked so alive under the lights, so unaware of how temporary it all was. I had known for months. I had seen the transfers, the secret withdrawals, the way he was slowly shifting his business shares to a private account under his name. He thought he was securing a future for himself and his mistress. What he didn't know was that I had beaten him to it. Ethan trusted me with everything, his documents, his legal files, his contracts. He was careless, too sure of himself. And every signature he had given in the last year, those routine approvals he never read carefully, had transferred everything he owned to me. The company he believed was his, the patents he bragged about, even the Callaway Foundation that bore his name, were legally mine. I watched him laughing with Tessa, his arm protectively around her shoulders. She was glowing, basking in borrowed light. Poor thing, she had no idea she was standing on a stage built on quicksand. A waiter passed by, and I caught Ethan's reflection in the mirror behind the bar. He saw me then, our eyes met for a fraction of a second. His smile faltered. For a moment, guilt flickered there, raw and unguarded. He walked toward me, leaving Tessa surrounded by reporters. "Lila," he said quietly, "you didn't have to stay for this. I know it must have been difficult." His voice was almost gentle, like he was comforting me after something he couldn't quite name. I turned to face him, my expression calm, my tone light. Difficult. No, I wanted to see you take your bow. After all, it's your night, isn't it? He frowned. You don't have to be like this. I never meant for you to get hurt. I tilted my head, pretending to think. Didn't you? He swallowed hard. Things just happened, Lila. You and I, we wanted different things. Right, I said softly. I wanted loyalty. You wanted applause. For a second, silence stretched between us, heavy and unspoken. Then I smiled faintly and added, enjoy this while it lasts, Ethan. Because the higher you climb, the harder the fall. He didn't understand then, but soon, he would. That night, as I walked out of the hall, the sound of his laughter followed me like a haunting melody. I stepped into my car, shut the door, and exhaled slowly. My hands trembled, not from pain, but from control. The kind of calm that comes when you finally stop being the victim in someone else's story. The city lights flickered as I looked out the window. Every skyscraper we'd built together stood like a monument to deceit. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who believed love could fix everything. She was gone now, buried somewhere beneath the ruins of our marriage. The woman who took her place was different. Calculated, silent, patient. He had humiliated me publicly, but I would destroy him quietly. By morning, the first move was already in motion. Bank accounts froze. Anonymous audits were requested. Board members received confidential reports exposing inconsistencies in his financial dealings, real, provable, devastating. The world would soon see Ethan Calloway not as a man of vision, but as a man of lies. And as I lay in bed that night, the sound of rain tapping against the windows, I whispered to myself, you chose her over me, Ethan. Now watch what she helps you lose. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, I smiled in the dark, because this was only the beginning. He came to my office drenched in rain, trembling and desperate, his once confident voice cracking. Lila, please, you don't understand. She's not who you think she is. He begged. I leaned back in my chair, calm and collected, then slid the folder across the table toward him. My voice was soft, almost tender. Oh, Ethan, I whispered, I know exactly who she is. But do you? He stared at me for a long moment, his hands shaking as he opened the folder. The pages inside were neatly arranged, DNA reports, financial statements, signed confessions. I watched the color drain from his face as his eyes scanned the lines that would shatter what little was left of his world. The silence in my office was thick. Only the sound of the rain outside filled the space, tapping against the glass like a quiet metronome counting down his downfall. His lips parted, his breath uneven. This can't be true, he muttered. His voice was barely a whisper, like he was afraid the truth would become more real if he spoke louder. But it was real. Tessa had confessed everything. The child she claimed was his wasn't his at all. She'd been involved with more than one man, investors from his own company who promised her luxury and influence in return for favors. She'd used Ethan's name, his position, and his arrogance as her stepping stones. And when I confronted her with the evidence weeks ago, she didn't even deny it. She only laughed, saying, men like him never learn. They always believe what they want to believe. And she was right. Ethan looked up at me, eyes wide with disbelief. Where did you get this? I didn't need to get it, I said simply. It came to me. People talk when they're paid enough to tell the truth. Especially people your mistress thought she could control. He pushed the folder away like it burned him. You set me up, he said, his voice trembling between anger and despair. No, Ethan, I said, my tone cool and even. You set yourself up. I just made sure the world saw what you really were. He stood, pacing the room like a trapped animal. I've lost everything, he said quietly, more to himself than to me. My company, my reputation, everything. I watched him without sympathy. You didn't lose it, Ethan. You gave it away, piece by piece, to greed, to pride, to her. He turned toward me suddenly, his eyes glistening with tears I never thought I'd see from him. Lila, I made a mistake, he said desperately. I know I hurt you, but please, I'm begging you, help me fix this. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I remembered the night he had humiliated me, the whispers, the pitying stares, the laughter that followed his public declaration of love for another woman. That memory hardened every ounce of softness left in me. Fix this, I said quietly. Ethan, some things can't be fixed. You broke more than promises. You broke people. He slumped into the chair, his hands covering his face. You don't understand, he whispered. I thought she loved me. I thought I finally found something real. I let out a soft, humorless laugh. You left something real for something that was convenient. You mistook validation for love. And now, you're realizing what real loss feels like. For the next few minutes, there was only silence. Then he looked at me again, his voice low and defeated. So what happens now? I folded my hands together. Now, you live with the consequences. The board has already replaced you. The investigations will continue, but I've made sure you won't end up in jail, as long as you stay out of my company, my name, and my life. He looked at me with hollow eyes. You're doing this out of revenge. No, I said softly. If this were revenge, I'd let you rot. This is justice. You taught me to stop waiting for someone else to fix things. He stayed silent, his shoulders shaking. Then he whispered, Lila, I don't know how to go on. I looked at him for a long moment. You should have thought of that before you destroyed everything you had. He stood slowly, his once confident frame now frail. I never stopped loving you, you know, he said quietly. I didn't respond. There were no words left for lies that came too late. When he left my office, I watched him walk through the rain until his figure disappeared into the gray. I thought that would be the last time I saw him. 3 days later, a letter arrived at my office. My secretary placed it gently on my desk, her eyes hesitant. I recognized his handwriting instantly. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it. Greater than Lila, you were right. I built my life on lies, and now I'm standing in the ruins. You deserved better, better than me, better than what I gave you. I thought I could live with the choices I made, but I can't. Every night I see your face, the woman who believed in me even when I didn't deserve it. You were my anchor, and I let you go. If I could take it all back, I would. But it's too late now. Please don't hate me forever. Goodbye, Ethan. I didn't realize I was crying until I saw the ink blur beneath my tears. The man I once loved had finally broken, but not because I destroyed him. Because he'd destroyed himself. That night, I received the call. Ethan had been found in his car on the edge of the city, the engine still running, his award, the one he'd received the night of his betrayal, shattered beside him on the passenger seat. The media called it an accident. I knew better. For days, I felt hollow. I didn't go to the funeral. I couldn't. There was too much pain tangled in what we'd once been. But when the storm cleared, I went to the ocean, his favorite place, and stood by the cliffs, letting the wind sting my face. I forgive you, I whispered to the air, though I wasn't sure he could hear me anymore. But I'll never forget. Months passed. The company began to flourish again. I rebuilt it with integrity, hiring people who valued compassion over greed. I launched a foundation under my name to help women who'd been silenced or betrayed, giving them the tools to rise again. And 1 year later, I stood on that same stage where my humiliation had begun. The audience applauded as I accepted the Woman of the Year award. The lights were bright, the cameras flashing, but this time, the spotlight felt right. I looked out at the crowd and said, success means nothing if it costs your soul. Love means nothing if it breaks someone else's heart. And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing peace over pain. Applause filled the hall, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. As I left the stage, I glanced at the front row. The seat where Ethan once sat was empty, but I didn't feel sorrow anymore. Only quiet strength. He had chosen his mistress over me on the biggest night of his life. But in the end, he lost everything, while I rose from the ashes he left behind. Because sometimes, karma doesn't need your help. It only needs your patience.